All right, guys, let's talk about food. Let's talk about food storage. Why? Because you should want to be able to feed yourself and your family, those under your authority, whether or not there's food at the store. Most of us now, we go to the store, there's food on the shelves, we buy food. What if, for whatever, I'm not getting into the doomsday prepper, like there's going to be a solar flare in 2012, or like, I'm not getting into that. Just for whatever of a myriad of reasons, you go to the store or any store and there is no more food on the shelf. There are ways to acquire food from the natural environment. That's not the topic of today. I encourage you to hunt and forage and trap and fish. But having some on hand is your easiest source of calories in the short term. Food storage is the topic du jour. Welcome to the podcast. Hopefully we keep God Almighty at the center, biblical, Judeo-Christian values in this topic, and hopefully many more, God willing, in the future. Let's talk about just not advanced, of just basic stuff. The first thing I'm going to talk about is something termed copy canning. I did not come up with this. I heard it on the Survival Podcast a long time ago. I don't know whether he came up with it or he heard it from somewhere else, but copy canning. Most of us will eat some form of canned food. Last night I had a can of sardines with dinner. Most of us will eat some form of canned food generally. Easy way, and an old adage, eat what you store and store what you eat. If you eat sardines on the regular, instead of buying one can of sardines, you buy two. You put them in storage. You put one in storage in addition to the one you would normally eat. Or if you would normally buy 5 cans, buy 10. Or whatever your budget allows. If you normally buy 5, buy 7. Put 2 in storage. And then, every couple of months, you take the older ones out and you eat those. And you put the newer ones in there so you get a constant rotation of food storage. But whatever that is, right? Cans of Denny Moore beef stew, cans of Hormel chili. Instead of buying 5 this week, again, you buy 7, you put 2 in storage. You do that every week for 6 months, and you have a decent store of food, and you're storing what you eat. And let me ask you this. In the past couple of years, several years, has food gone up in price or down in price? Right? So, with a few exceptions, food has gone up in price. So if you do this, you're not hurting yourself if you store what you eat and you do the copy canning. You're actually kind of giving yourself a raise because you're paying less for the food that you're going to eat because it's going to cost more. So you're just kind of giving yourself a buffer. There's really no downside other than you have a little bit less disposable income that you were probably going to spend on something fairly useless on Amazon anyway, let's be honest. So copy canning. If you don't have a lot of budget for this, let me ask you, do you go out to eat? Instead of going out to eat at home, save some money. If you are trying to lose some weight, if you're overweight, maybe skip a meal, skip a lunch, whatever won't kill you, and put that money towards the copy canning. In copy canning, let's not get too wrapped around the axle on the term canned, right? Because you could do this with ramen noodles. Ramen noodles is something that I don't generally eat because I've been what people would call keto way before I heard the term keto, going on like 15 years-ish. But most people eat ramen. If you eat ramen like most people, ramen's a super easy thing to store. It will store probably longer than most canned goods, assuming no critters get into it. Ramen noodles last a long time. Ramen noodles, you could do this with copy canning. Skip that meal if you have to. But if you don't have to, just buy 2 or 3 boxes instead of buying a box and put them in storage. This is an easy way to get into storing food. Now, when you want to get a little bit more of a buffer for less, let's say you do have disposable income and you're not worried about every penny in, because a lot of the stuff is not stuff you're going to eat on the regular. But putting beans and rice into buckets or buying buckets of beans and rice. If you want to do the least brain power possible, you could do Amazon. Amazon has subscribe and save. And you could literally put like a bucket of beans and a bucket of rice on there every month. And then in 6 months, you have 6 buckets of rice and 6 buckets of beans. But I'm not big on eating grains day to day, because if you look at the things that generally eat grains, cows, horses, they're generally pretty big in the midsection. I'm much more of like the lion philosophy, the leopard philosophy, eat meat, eat fat. But anyway, the reason that humans historically grow grain is that it stores well. I don't know many people historically or today that if you offered them a nice, ribeye steak or a pound of rice would take the rice. They're going to take the steak. But steak doesn't store as well as rice, especially pre-refrigeration, which is what you're probably concerned about a lot more if you're talking about storing food for a disaster. So grains, historically, we grow them because they're a good store of calories and they store well and easily. This is why you should store them. By grains, I don't mean specifically grains, but things like grains, things that store like grains, beans, rice, wheat, one of my favorites, quick oats, because if you don't have energy and you don't have power, boiling water is kind of a pain. Even me, I heat my house with wood, and even with a big store of wood, it's kind of a pain to boil enough water to not only purify water, but to cook with. So quick oats, if you want to cook them and boil them, you certainly can, but if you just add water to them and leave them and get the water basically warm if you want warm, quick oats are pretty easy to cook like that. But cooking like dried beans and rice can be a lot more labor intensive, so don't overlook quick oats. A lot of people don't mention that, but that's one of my favorite go-to items to store. Store them in a cool, dry place. Again, buckets if you can. If you're just getting started and the buckets are a barrier to entry because they're expensive and time-consuming, just get bags and put them in your closet, assuming your closet doesn't have, rodents or roaches or anything in there. That'll work for a while. Eventually, you're going to want to do the buckets. Buckets, generally food-grade buckets, and or a bucket with a Mylar bag, and you put the grains in the bag, in the bucket, you seal them, and they're good for a long time. Probably longer than you care about, because it's probably going to be so long in the future you don't care when they expire. I've heard that they found grain in the pyramids that was still usable, right? So, gonna probably be okay. Which brings me to wheat. Wheat is a good one to store. Red wheat, white wheat. You can also store flour, but flour does not store as long as the actual wheat. If you're going to store a bunch of flour, though, you can just sprout it and eat it if you have to, but then you're going to want to do things like grinding and mills and things like that. So I would actually stay away from the wheat in the beginning. I would rice, beans, quick oats. Those are some good ones. And my personal favorite thing to store, peanut butter. Right? If you're allergic to peanuts, I feel sorry for you. I really do. I don't mean that facetiously. Like, I really do. I'm not condescending. I feel sorry for you if you're allergic to peanuts. If you're not allergic to peanuts and you're a man, odds are you like peanut butter. Right? I'm just going to go out on a limb and say you like peanut butter. We can get into the whole creamy versus crunchy debate. I'm a crunchy dude. I'll eat creamy. That's fine. I just don't like it as much as crunchy. But peanut butter. Peanut butter is fairly affordable. Maybe if you look at it like the size of the container, not so much, but if you look at it per calories wise, right, a pound of peanut butter has a lot of calories, and it has a lot of things that the grains are not going to have, like good healthy fats, protein. Grains will have some protein, but peanut butter has a lot of protein. It has a lot of fat. It has a lot of calories. So we're talking about storing food. If you're bugging in, not an issue. But if you have to bug out and you have to grab, let's say, a duffel bag full of calories, you're going to be able to fit a lot more calories of in your duffel bag if it's peanut butter than if it's grain. Peanut butter is a great thing to store. Again, store what you eat, what you store. Peanut butter is not going to store as long as a lot of other canned food, but it stores a long time. So if you're going to store some high-calorie, dense food with fats, and a lot of people think today fat is bad because people are fat. Eating fat doesn't make you fat. Eating a bunch of carbs makes you fat. Eating a bunch of sugar makes you fat. And eating more calories than you expend makes you fat. But eating fat does not make you fat. You will die without fat. You can live your whole life without eating another carb, and you'll be fine. Your body can create its own carbs from protein and fat. It's called gluconeogenesis. Look it up. Your body cannot create its own fat, to use. Like, you will die if you do not eat fat at all. You will die. If you do not eat protein, you will die. If you do not eat carbs, you will be fine and probably healthier. So protein, a good source of protein, a good source of fat, a good source of fiber, a good source of other things. And who doesn't like peanut butter, right? If you told me I could only store a thing for the apocalypse, it would be peanut butter, like as far as food goes. Like if I had to pick between beans and rice or Quick Oats or corn, or peanut butter, or any else I can really think of, I would choose peanut butter. Peanut butter is another good one. It is probably my favorite all around. It's calorie dense. It's good for you. If you get a kind that's not like swimming in sugar and corn syrup, but just like regular basic peanut butter, it's good for you. Again, start out simple. Start out with just the 1 pound jars. Walmart or whatever brand, they make the kind with less sugar in it. 1 pound things, I don't know what they'll cost at the time that you're listening to this, but right now like $2 or under for a pound of peanut butter. Instead of buying 1, buy 2 or 3. Put a couple away. Another basic thing you're going to want to store is salt. Now, a lot of people today don't think about salt because a lot of people eat a lot of processed food. I tend to try not to. But with a modern American diet, a lot of Americans get probably too much salt. But salt is something that's absolutely essential. You will die without it. It's so cheap right now. Historically, it's been super expensive and exotic. Right? In fact, the term salary comes from the term salt, which is how the Romans paid their soldiers in salt. That's where we get the term salary from, which is my second ancient Rome reference for the day. But salt, store salt. It's cheap now. It's affordable now. Unless you live somewhere that has an abundance of natural salt, like the Great Salt Lake, you need to store salt. Even if you live near the ocean, evaporating that and purifying that's a lot of labor. So just have it, even if you can do that in the long term. In the short term, have some salt. Salt's an easy thing to store. It stores basically indefinitely. So store some salt. Get an extra bottle of multivitamins for your micronutrients. Store those. And that's where we're going to stop for today. Basic. Again, food storage basics. Basics food storage. You can worry about building your bunker out and having a hydroponic system to grow, bean sprouts underground later. But for the basics, start there. I've gotten questions about this kind of stuff. Start there for your basic food storage. Not a tactical tip of the day, but if you want to get motivated for this, read the book Survival Theory 2. It's, among other things, a case study of human starvation in the 20th century, like modern times, even in places like Europe where people were starving to death. So that'll get you motivated reading some of those horrific stories. And then tactical verse of the day, I'm not going to give you an actual verse quoted because I don't have it memorized, but the story of Joseph, the story of the Pharaoh, and the story of the 7 years of famine, where people were selling gold and silver for food, they were selling their land for food, they were selling their livestock for food, and then they were selling themselves into slavery for food. Why? Because they were starving. And what did God tell Joseph to do? Store food. Now, yes, I believe God will provide. God provided for Joseph and his family, but they had to store they had to store food, right? They stored food. Kind of like Noah. Like God saved Noah and they ate, Noah, they ate in the ark. He saved them. They had to build the ark. God could have built an ark and had it descend from the heavens, right? God can do anything. He had them build the ark to prepare themselves for the tribulation coming. God told Joseph to store grain, but Joseph had to go around and store the grain. Or God told Joseph the revelation, he gave him the revelation of what the dream meant of the 7 years of famine. Joseph went around and stored the grain, right? So, yes, God will provide, but you need to prepare. Like, that's the biblical principle there. So, for your verses of the day, you can look those up and read them if you want. One will be in Genesis, they'll both be in Genesis. So, there you go. I appreciate you guys. I appreciate all that you do. I really do appreciate you. Like, subscribe, listen, leave a review. I appreciate you. Share with somebody you think they needs to store food. Even if you've told them, right? Another verse, Jesus says a prophet has no honor in his own country. Not that I'm a prophet, but a lot of times it's easier for somebody to listen to an outsider that they see as an expert than somebody they know. Even though it's nonsensical, people go, what does he know about storing food? His lawn looks like garbage. I'm not going to listen to him, or whatever people say. Who cares what he says about storing food? He can't even golf under par or whatever. It's just easier sometimes for an outsider. Again, I'm not a prophet, right? But storing food is just a common sense kind of thing that you probably should do. I appreciate you guys and have a blessed day.